You're watching MNN Midday. Up to the minute, breaking news from around the world.
Good evening and welcome to MNN. Our lead first in flight on Mars. Earlier this morning, NASA made history by doing a test flight on Ingenuity helicopter on Mars. The helicopter rose over 4 feet in the air, rotated, and sat back down, which makes Ingenuity the first man-made vehicle to fly on another planet. Ingenuity, a 4-pound helicopter that traveled to Mars inside NASA's Perseverance rover, which landed in February 2021. This feat is amazing in and of itself, not only because the Martian atmosphere is so thin, but that it generally takes about 5 to 20 minutes for a radio signal to travel the distance between Mars and Earth, and that is depending on the planet's positioning. Traditionally, orbiters relay messages is beneficial because they are much closer to Perseverance than Deep Space Network antennas on planet Earth. Next up, man on a mission. From Russia at this hour, Mr. Alexei Navalny has been moved to a prison hospital and away from his cell where he has been on a hunger strike. Allies of the Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny unveiled plans on yesterday for what they hope would be the largest protest in modern Russian day history. Now, they're going to do that this Wednesday in St. Petersburg, Russia. There have been reports that thousands of Russian troops are amassing to center and counter the protesters and make arrests should they gather. Simultaneously, Washington warned Russia it would pay a price if Mr. Navalny died in jail from his hunger strike, which has so far lasted 13 days. It has been widely reported that Navalny is close to death at this hour. The protest date was brought forward after a medical trade union with ties to Navalny said on Saturday he was in critical condition, citing medical tests which it said showed Navalny's kidneys could soon fail, which could lead to cardiac arrest. The Russian ambassador to Britain, Mr. Andrei Kelin, had this to say about Navalny. Quote, "He will not be allowed to die in prison, but I can say that he behaves like a hooligan." End quote. Navalny's allies had declared a moratorium on protests after staging 3 demonstrations at the height of winter. Some protesters were unhappy that the demonstrations were halted, but organizers said they would hold a bigger protest once 500,000 people had registered online to take part. In light of Navalny's poor health conditions, organizers say they were calling the protests on Wednesday this week anyway, despite being around 40,000 people short of their total goal. Now, moving to the United States. Progress on the COVID home front, USA. Now, in the United States, half of all adults, it said, according to the government, as of Sunday, have been vaccinated at least once with the COVID-19 shot. That's amazing. Almost 130 million people 18 or older have received at least one dose of the vaccine, or 50.4% of the total adult population. And this is from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Now, almost 84 million people, or adults, about 32.5% of the population, have been fully vaccinated. The U.S. cleared the 50% mark for adults just a day after it reported that the global death toll from the coronavirus topped a staggering 3 million, according to the totals compiled by the Johns Hopkins University, though the actual numbers are believed to be significantly higher. In other developments concerning the pandemic, the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, indicated on yesterday that the government will likely move this Friday to resume use of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine, possibly with restrictions for broader warnings after reports of some very rare blood clot cases. Now, the data from the Harvard School of Public Health show that COVID-19 cases and mortality rates for men and women vary widely among U.S. states. Now, it is said in some states the mortality rate among men is almost double that among women. In other states, it's said it's almost equal. Now to Delhi. Crisis in Delhi. The capital city of India today decided on a 6-day lockdown as it is being overwhelmed with 25,500 coronavirus cases in a 24-hour period on Saturday, which about 1 in 3 people tested positive during that result. Delhi's chief minister urged the federal government to provide more hospital beds to tackle the crisis. There are less than 100 critical care beds available in the city of more than 20 million people. Now, as of Sunday, the medical community has reported that they are 5 times over their capacity and that they were placing 2 infected persons per bed in the crisis. I said exactly, 2 people per bed. Now the bigger worry is that in the last 48 hours, positivity rates have increased to around 30% from 24%. In a separate statement, the city government said it had informed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's federal administration about the dire need of beds and oxygen, and beds were now being set up in schools. New Delhi, which has imposed a strict weekend curfew, is among the worst hit cities in India, where a second major wave of coronavirus infections is straining health infrastructure. Nationwide, India reported 261,500 new cases on Sunday, taking the total number of cases to nearly 14.8 million, second only to the United States, which has reported more than 31 million infections. The country's death from COVID cases rose 1,501 to reach a total of 177,150. There's no option but to lock down Delhi for 1 to 2 weeks, said Dr. Ambish Mittal, a top doctor of endocrinology and diabetes at the hospital operator Max Healthcare, adding that weekend curfews will no longer do. Next up, Egypt's hazardous rail system. 11 people were killed and 98 injured on Sunday in a train accident in Egypt's Kalumba province north of Cairo. The train was heading from Cairo to North New Delta city of Mansouri when 4 cars derailed at 11:54 Greenwich Mean Time, about 25 miles north of Cairo. More than 50 ambulances took the injured to 3 hospitals in the province. This particular derailing is the latest of several recent railway crashes in Egypt. At least 20 people were killed and nearly 200 were injured in March when 2 trains collided near Tata, about 275 miles south of Cairo. More Egyptians died last month on train crashes in Egypt. 32 people were perished and 165 were injured after 2 passenger trains collided in central Egypt. Now in financials, news at this hour, Bitcoin is trading north of $56,000 but was down sharply this weekend. Bitcoin, the world's biggest cryptocurrency, fell as much as 14% to $51,541 yesterday, reversing most of the big gains it made over the previous week. Now Bitcoin was the latest and last trading down 10% at $53,991 as of 13:20 Greenwich Mean Time, a whopping $12,000 below record highs set on last Wednesday. Smaller rival coin maker blockchain network dropped 10% to $2,101. Now, Luke Sully, a CEO of Digital Asset Treasury Specialist Ledger, said in an email that people may have sold on the news of the power outage in China and not the impact it actually had on the network. The power outage doses and exposed a fundamental weakness that although the Bitcoin network is decentralized, the mining of it is not. The retreat in Bitcoin also comes after Turkey's central bank banned the use of cryptocurrency for purchases on Friday. Now, finally, body swapping in China. If you could believe, it still occurs. A Chinese man with Down syndrome was kidnapped and killed to provide a substitute body. A Chinese man with Down syndrome was murdered in an attempt to circumvent a ban on traditional burials. Cremation is enforced in some densely populated areas in China. But to get around the regulations, one family paid a man to provide them with a body to swap with that of their deceased relative. It later emerged that the body was that of a murder victim killed by the man they hired, an event the family insists they were unaware of. The family from Shaiwan of Guangdong province spent nearly 12,000 lira in 2017 to get a substitute for cremation. The man they hired was identified only by his surname, Hong. Now, according to court documents, Hong spotted the 36-year-old victim picking up litter from the streets and asked him into his car before giving him alcohol until he fell unconscious. Hong put the man's body into a coffin, nailed it shut, and passed it on to the family a few days later. The family then had the coffin cremated, pretending it was their own deceased relative. This left them free to secretly hold a traditional burial. The crime was not uncovered until more than 2 years after the victim was reported missing. For news up to the minute, join us each day during the week on Midday. Thank you.